Break-even brothers part
Cool. All right, we are live. Happy Wednesday, Brad. We made it halfway through the week. Back with episode 35, Break-Even Brothers podcast. What's going on, dude?
Not much, but Happy New Year to everybody out there. First
Right.
episode of 2026, and we made it. We started what in 2024?
Oh, that's a good question. It must have been.
Yeah.
Must have been like summer
June
of 2024.
2024.
That's crazy.
Gosh,
That's crazy.
that was a good
Yeah.
episode. Quitting big tech, man, how we've come full circle. But if you haven't listened to the first episode of our podcast, you definitely should give it a listen. We might have a bit more likes and ums in there, and we still have some, but it's one for the books. But yeah, doing well. New year, lots of changes, lots of AI advancements too. Honestly, I think every week I'm sending Ben bookmarks, and it's my podcast reminder to go back and look at them. So I was just catching up on things, but lots of changes. One thing that's been hitting the headlines recently, which Bennett actually sent to me earlier today, was Tailwind Labs drama. And so for those who might or might not be familiar, Adam Wathan, the creator of Tailwind, which has changed pretty much all web development by creating Tailwind CSS, kind of revolutionizing CSS in an easy way. There's been some fire, some scrutiny. Essentially, someone created a PR on Tailwind CSS saying, can we add specific instructions for agents? This would allow agents to essentially parse the Tailwind docs better. So they call it an LLMs.txt file. So instead of an agent going and fetching HTML from Tailwind, it would actually hit the single file, which just has all the markdown of every single documentation. And Adam posted a comment, I think yesterday, rejecting the offer to add this file because the Tailwind business is struggling. And in that comment, he had mentioned that 75% of their team was laid off. Yeah, big news. Hate to see it. I, for one, have used Tailwind CSS for all my projects, and I even use their open source software for their UI components called Headless UI. So their engineers created that, published it. It works great. No complaints, but yeah, a little tough to see. Adam's a smart guy, obviously, and for him to kind of go through this business change with AI, it's kind of a start of a shift. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I come at it from a different lens because obviously not a traditional programmer by nature, but being familiar with Tailwind, it always gave me fits dealing with front end. That's not anything a reflection of Tailwind. It's just a reflection of me and my skills. But like that was the library to use for so long, and so many front ends these days are built with it. And I think from my perspective, looking into that company and looking at Adam, who's pretty active on Twitter or on X, it was actually super surprising to see, and he was pretty honest. I think in the GitHub comment, I think he mentions that they had to lay off 75% of the team yesterday, and this was posted yesterday, so it must have been on Monday, the January 5th, and then also saying that their Tailwind is growing faster than ever and is bigger than it's ever been, and our revenue is down close to 80%, which like it's just shocking numbers. Like to lose 75% of your staff, to have revenue down 80%. While you're technically growing, and I'm sure in large part due to all the vibe coding and just a broad stream appeal of like building things using Tailwind. But for me, it was like, wow, someone who's as smart as Adam, who has this business that's been around for a long time, that like just probably printed money at certain points in the journey. I'm sure this quickly can be turned upside down. And it's interesting because I was thinking about this when you and I were talking about when we first started the podcast, and I'm sure in June 2024, like things are probably not this way with Tailwind, and things we're probably still pretty profitable, still doing well, I'm sure. And just quickly in that short amount of time, in 18 months or whatever it is, that like we've arrived here at this point where like there is people are vibe coding, people are doing more and more stuff with AI. But now we're starting to see like some real, and I think for you and I, it's more tangible because we don't know these people personally, but like we've followed them for a long time, been connected to them for a long time, and seen the journey over the last I don't know, 6-7 years. And it's crazy to see it happen to people that like know, it feels different than like, oh, General Motors lays off 10,000 people like that. Just that's horrible. And you feel bad for them. But like to see it happen on a smaller scale with people that you kind of know or follow, it's like, wow, this is really here. And like, here we are in 2026.
Yeah, it's a weird divide because it powers so much of the internet. I think the team size was 4 people, if I was reading correctly from his comments. So just to give more context, 75% is 3 people, still significant for their workforce, but it is crazy to think that something that was so successful and something I recommended so much, which is their Tailwind UI kit, which I use to build split my expenses, like literally the code there for the UI is built with Adam's product, which I thought had a ton of value, becomes more or less obsolete overnight once these AI models hit this critical threshold. And I know for a long time, Adam has wanted and talked about building a SaaS. And I think he had tried a few things, whatever, it might not have worked out the way he wanted to. So there was attempts, I think, to steer the business in a different direction. But my guess is 2026 rolled around, business reviews, doing your taxes, figuring out, profit and loss statements. Then it kind of hits you like AI is only getting better. If this is what my revenue looks like, if this is what my costs are, it's not looking too good. So I'm glad he course corrected. I applaud his transparency and honesty, being in a tough position where he's rejecting what seems to be a good contribution from open source due to the fact that the business is struggling. So it's kind of at that divide where what's good for everybody else is this PR gets merged. What's good for him and his business is it doesn't get merged. And so you get this weird divide. And I think what it boils down to is if you're in a business where text output, specifically coding text output, is the core business model, where when I paid for Tailwind many, many years ago, I was paying for pre-built UI components. So something that looked pretty that I could go copy and paste and put it in my web app. And it worked wonderfully back then. So we didn't have, the opus of today. But if that's your entire business model, it's a little tough. I mean, coding agents have come so far in 6 months, so far in 2 years that you really need to have more diversified income at this point. And I'm sure he's obviously realized that by now and way before this, but at some point it's hard to really come up with a new business out of thin air when things are working so well, like a complete 180, I'm sure, over the past 2 years. So
yeah,
definitely a tough time for him. And on top of that, there was additional news in the same realm that Jeffrey Way, the creator of Laracasts, which we all know and love in the Laravel community, he also laid off, I think, 1 or more of his talented instructors. So originally, Laracast was kind of the Netflix of Laravel content, so educational content. Over the years, he had hired really talented Laravel developers to come in and expand the platform. And he had been tweeting actually in the past few weeks about how AI is taking over and how he needs to pivot the business of educational content to include AI. And then just recently, maybe a day or 2 ago, like pretty much same day of Adam's situation, one of their top educators on the platform, who is really well known in the Laravel community, was laid off. And he had described it as abruptly, where I think he was traveling on a plane and like he had got off the plane. He was informed of the news he was laid off. And then he got on his next plane to travel to his final destination for like a layover. So it definitely sounded abrupt. But if you kind of look at Jeffrey's tweets for the past 2 weeks, my read on it is, wow, things are really changing in the same bucket of what I imagine Tailwind Labs is dealing with, where if I need education content, I'm talking to AI. I'm not going to Laracasts. I'm sure there's good content there, but it pulls me out of the flow. It does different things. It's just a different era. And I think Jeffrey has not published the official numbers of decreased revenue and costs, but my guess is that revenue dip is pretty significant. So significant that, he had to adjust the team size and business size to make what's best for the business to happen. So unfortunate news to have, talented folks from Tailwind get laid off and folks from Laracast get laid off when both Jeffrey and Adam are extremely intelligent people. It just feels like these businesses are in a tough spot given the age of AI.
Yeah. And, I was thinking about the Laracast layoff because, I'm completely speculating here. I don't have any inside information, obviously, but like, for it to be abruptly, I'm wondering if like Jeffrey, the owner of Laracast, or like the founder, like knew he had to cut some people to keep the bills going and stuff like that. like didn't want to do it before the holidays, and so as soon as the holiday break was over,
Could be.
like maybe that was something. Or if it's not that, if it was like, oh crap, I don't have enough money like in the business, enough money to run payroll for all these folks, like for the next month I need to cut bait now. Like I don't know what the situation was, but for it to be abrupt, it's interesting wording, because it's like, was it, again, was he waiting till after the holidays, or was it like, oh my gosh, like we are really bleeding cash and I can't bleed anymore, this has got to go. Because yeah, I mean, it's really, there's no good way to do that thing. I'm sure he feels crummy about it. It's probably one of the cons of being a business owner and having employees. So, I'm sure it sucks for him, but like, yeah, it is interesting, the abrupt comment. But I suppose no matter who gets that message, it probably usually is abrupt anyways. You're just taken out of, you completely, caught by surprise. Like, oh wow, okay, yeah, this is a lot to take in all of a sudden. And in his case, on some vacation, right? So, yeah, sucks. Hopefully, he gets back on his feet and finds something else to do. Sounds like he was a pretty talented instructor. And yeah, that's just the way it is right now. And we're just in the first week or second week of 2026, first full week of 2026, and it's supposed to be the year of agents, right? Like this is supposed to be the year, and maybe we're already starting off with a bang on that front.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the last thing in that pillar is Stack Overflow, which has been a repeated kind of showcase of how AI is shifting what used to be the most popular developer platform to get information completely bottomed out. I think the number of searches they've shown over the past like 5 years has gone up during COVID, because that's when people were, a lot of coding was happening. And then the second AI models take market share just completely, straight downwards in the graph. So yeah, tough time. I think there's lots of reflection in 2026. I almost think that I was doing a bit of spending reflection myself, understanding what AI tools I pay for, because there's been so much momentum in that space that I felt like I was paying for probably one too many things. I thought, going into 2026, what do I actually use? Like, I'm a big proponent of Claude Code. I started using Codex more, which I'll talk about later, but almost at some point, there's like this AI honeymoon, or AI moon to call it, where like, hey, I'll try that. And like at a certain point, some of these costs got to go, especially when you look at a business where you're trying to spend on software that makes you more productive. Well, maybe you'll try a few things. Not everything sticks. And so I wonder if 2026 feels like the first full focus year of adopting AI across all factions, where it's not just engineering, but we're talking, legal, accounting, HR. Like, we want to use it everywhere because it's been so general purpose. Although these might be coding models and coding agents, clearly they have, standing in other dimensions. So to me, it almost feels like if it paints a different picture of these layoffs are indicators that business is shifting, because we're trying to forecast what this might be. And I imagine for people like myself who spend all this money on AI tools, like, one, people will check in and figure out, do I actually need this? And two, I think there'll be another wave of broad adoption for 2026 where, I don't know about you, but I feel at the enterprise level, companies hear about the promise of AI, and it's so proven now from everything that we've seen that, to me, 2026 feels like the year of how do we get AI in everybody's hands? No ifs, ands, or buts. Where 2025 felt like a testing period, to me, 26 feels like we know what's valuable. How do we get people educated and onboarded and just integrate it into the flows and change their mindset to say AI first? How can we, reduce some of these bottlenecks? Because we've talked about this so much in 2025 being play with the tools because they change, and two, rethink how you work. I think 2026, it's not play with the tools and rethink things. It's you must do this or else, someone is going to take your job. Because I feel like that's a bit of an extreme, but you get the point of, there feels like there's almost like a deadline that's looming in 2026 where the AI expectation is here or being formed as we speak across all these organizations. And it's tough. I mean, I think a lot of people still are against AI, and that's a hard stance to hold in 2026 given the productivity gains. But yeah, interesting year, interesting start. Trying to paint a little bit of a picture of maybe this is a bigger signal for there's a bit of change up in spending and headcount and productivity and almost in expectations heading into 2026.
Yeah. Well, I think, one thing that you hit on was like redo the work that you're doing, but like with like AI, with agents. And I think probably comparing this year to last year, what I think's been a really big development is like the Agents SDK. Like, so I know Claude has a really good Agents SDK. I haven't used it, but I've heard only good things.
Mm-hmm.
OpenAI has one, which I have used here and there. I've talked about LangChain, but like, I think the agents piece of it, like before it was just like chat and responses API. And now it's like you have this agents SDK where you can build. Now you have skills. And then now you have, MCP, it's been hit and miss, I think. But like
Mm-hmm.
you can see the ecosystem start to come around of like, okay, we can give this thing knowledge. We can give this thing like context. And we can give it certain actions that we need it to do for us. Like we can delegate to this thing, this agent, how we do those actions in the form of skills and tools and stuff like that. So like it's kind of all come together. And I feel like, for this year, there isn't really anything, at least in the knowledge work world, I would say, maybe except for rare exceptions, like there isn't really anything in that knowledge work world where like it can't do. You just need to kind of figure out how to glue it all together, which I think is the challenge, especially for non-technical, departments. Speaking in accounting, it's like, how do we get comfortable? We're so used to Excel, so used to being able to like put our initials in certain cells and save the file. Like there's comfort in that, but that's really not the best way to do it anymore. I think everyone would agree to that. So like, how do we, I see these agents SDKs are out there. I see that Claude can work with Excel files, or Claude can, do all this cool stuff for me. How do I take what I do right now and put it into a AI where I'm also comfortable with how it gets the answers? One example that I was actually working through in my day job was, some kind of reconciliation, right? And, part of the build, we were discussing like, there was one camp that was like, let's just give AI the two data sets and let it just reconcile, let it just find out the differences. And while I don't doubt that it can, especially as these models get more and more intelligent, it's like, no, I want it to be like more of like a skill where like this is the code to run to identify the differences. And like, there's probably, there might be a little bit of nuance to that, but like I want, again, as the architect, I guess, of how I want this work to be done by an agent, like I want AI in certain spots and I don't want AI in not other spots. Like I want to be like selective about where I deploy it. So like, but that's kind of what it looks like this year. I think it's more about like, you have all the tools, you just need to go out and, learn it and also put it into practice. Cause like you said, if you're not, someone else will. And like, that's the expectation now. That's definitely what everyone knows. It's capable. You just got to figure out how to put it all together,
Yeah, an idea I had just thought of when you're mentioning that was being almost like a AI contractor coming into businesses, looking at their inefficiencies, knowing actually what Claude Code can do for you, given its heaps and heaps of changes over the past few months, even the Agents SDK, and kind of packaging this up. So yeah, if you're really into AI and you are looking to help companies, I feel like that would be the perfect opportunity to kind of distill this, what feels like forever moving stream of information about AI, and make that actually actionable, because there's a lot of overwhelm, especially on Twitter, especially just reading the news of how fast these things move. If you can put your finger on it and say, this is what's capable today, this is probably what's capable in 3 to 6 months as well, you're going to be in a good spot. And I think companies will be begging to have an AI expert just leading some of the charge here. And so, yeah, I think we've talked about it so many times, but my advice, and I think Ben would agree, would definitely try these tools out. 2026 is going to be a big year for AI. The competition was very hot leading in the past 3 months of 2025. So you can only imagine that as competition grows, these models are going to get better. The harnesses which run the models, the products which the models are embedded in, will only get better. And that's just, at the end of the day, really exciting for the consumer and enterprises trying to derive more productivity and value from it.
Yeah, and I was just, as you were talking about that, because the contractor thing was a good thought, and I was like, let me just go look at like LinkedIn or a job board and see like what an AI engineer type role is these days. Not like an engineer like where you work at a company and you build out products, right? Like not like that, but like where you are being hired to like specifically build out agent workflows at different places. And so there's a job post here. I won't read all the details, but have a foundation in Python, LangGraph, Pydantic AI, Google ADK, the agent development kit. So like we're already starting to see this stuff in job postings. Be familiar with tool augmented reasoning chains, RAG, all that kind of stuff that we've talked about, MCP. So like it's here, it's being sought after now. Where before it might have been more like a hobby and like
Yeah.
cutting edge, that it wasn't really in enterprise yet. Now it's here. It talks about integrating MCP with in different places for this business. So it's super cool, and I think too. I'm curious. What will you worked at a lot of different places, Brad, and my experience in almost every place I've worked is there's lots of different systems around, and that there in itself makes a huge challenge too. Like that becomes a problem of like maintaining all the different systems, and this was set up here because so and so did it that way, and it's just been that way ever since. I'm curious, like in 3 or 4 years down the road, do we have a similar problem where there's just all these agents running rogue and people are afraid to turn them off because they don't know what it really does,
Honestly, probably yes. I feel like that will actually happen, because if there's anything about the revolution of AI and AI coding agents, is that I, for one, have created so many layers of personal software where I'll create one tool and the next tool will use that tool, and just kind of building my own personal software stack. And I think at work, I would also employ the same behavior where, I have to use this system, which is really, legacy system, not easy to work with. Let me create a small CLI tool to make that easier. And then now that I have that, I can invoke that CLI tool from various entry points. And oftentimes it becomes easier to create the software than it does to go through the official process to, ask that team to fix it or find a new vendor. So to me, I think it'll become even more important to have like good documentation and have the agency to create software. But with that, I think you need to not be scared to make changes to other code bases. So I think, yes, there will definitely be agents that are critical that no one knows what the heck is going on, but it's one of those legacy systems, legacy agents in the future. However, with agents, we do get the power to make changes, even broad changes, pretty quickly. So if anything, it should be a time where there's a lot more software churn. The cost of software is really cheap now, which provides a weird market dynamic, but having good software and reliable software, we're not yet there yet. Salesforce isn't going out of business, for instance, which is the classic example of, let me just vibe code a Salesforce replacement. So we're not there yet.
Yeah. Or a Slack replacement, right? I think people want to do that for Slack because sometimes the Slack bill can be pretty high. Cool. One other thing I wanted to mention too, before we get into kind of Codex stuff, because I know you wanted to hit on that, is actually, it goes into like the knowledge work and the AI stuff in the accounting world. And so they released, they being TaxDome, I should preface that. TaxDome is like a document portal. It is like an organizer, like a CRM almost for like, if you're a CPA firm and you do taxes, this is a place where clients can upload their docs essentially, and you can communicate with them. So it's like an all-in-one CRM document management platform. They just, I think probably a month or two ago now, I don't know the exact date, but they released a beta, and I think they've been rolling it out more and more, where you can send your client docs that clients upload. So say, Brad, you're going to do your taxes with me, hypothetical. Hey, I request your W-2, I request your, any 1099s that you have. You'll upload them to TaxDome. I have these documents here. A lot of times the CPAs will then, either themselves or have a preparer take the information in those documents and put them into their tax software, right? Like that's a different thing where you go and file the taxes. Like you take the data from there, you put it in the system before you hit submit to the IRS. Well, Juno basically, I don't want to downplay their tech stack, but I'm just trying to summarize. They basically do like document extraction, to put it into tax forms. So they basically help you take documents, PDFs, images, handwritten notes, extract the data points from that, from that material, and then they can work and input it into your tax software. So I thought it was pretty cool because tax is one of the things that is like, if you look at most tax software, not TaxDome, but the actual filing software, it's pretty ancient. It's pretty dinosaur. It is the most, 1995 looking software that you'll find out there. So accounting needs this bad. And I'm curious to see how well it works. And so it's a beta launch. I'm going to try and see from folks that I'm like connected with and that are going to use it for this tax season, like how good is it? Like if I just give you a W-2, that seems pretty straightforward. Like anyone can really probably pull information from a W-2 these days with AI, but like, is it good with handwritten notes? Is it good with receipts that have all kinds of different lines? So I'll be curious to see how it shakes out. We'll report back on the pod sometime in April or May after tax season. See how it
Tax
looks like there.
season.
Yeah.
Nice. That's
Big
cool.
stuff.
I was just looking at their pricing, $700 a year per seat with a 3-year commitment. It
For
looks like they have a
Taxdome?
toggle on. Yeah, this is Taxdome's pricing. It looks like they have a toggle at the top: 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy to walk into a 3-year software plan for software that I hope changes, but maybe in that world, things don't change as much.
Taxdome's pretty cool. I will give them. I think they've done a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of different players in that area right now, with like tax organizers and like workflow organizers. But I think I think they're doing a good job. So,
Okay, so it's worth it.
well, yeah. I mean, I think the high annual price kind of was like, whoa. But I think if it's $1,000
Mhm.
for the year, what is that? Like $83 a month, essentially, something like that. So,
That's true. Yeah.
like it's in. Yeah, it's compared to like, again, the context for CPA firms is that they're like paper, they're dinosaurs. So like Taxdome is, and there's other firms that do it too. There's one called Carbon. There's one called Ignition. So like there's other firms that do this, but like it's all good. We got to get everyone out of the dinosaur age for accounting and bring them into the modern world. So yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
pricey, but I think it's on the right track. I think it's worth
Yeah.
it.
Speaking of AI plus taxes, I saw on Twitter recently someone talking about feeding in their expenses and trying to get some, California business forms filed through Claude
Mm,
Code. So it was, dumping your
yeah.
expenses list from various bank accounts or credit cards and saying, Claude, go for it. I think it was decently successful. I
Hmm.
wonder how far you could get with that, because I think I tried this the year prior where I was trying to just dump my info into AI. And I think at this time it was Claude, just the normal Claude chat app versus Claude Code, where I think Claude Code has the skills to, modify and create CSV, probably also to fill PDFs, where I think the chat app didn't really know how to do that. So I want to give it a run through, this season, just see what happens. I'm not going to say I'll submit it because it probably won't get that far, but I'm curious to see how far these computer agents can get with it. And
Yeah.
in the same vein, I'm seeing these new usages for Claude Code. One that I wanted to call out, which is taking your ancestry data, so the DNA, raw DNA data, and bringing that into Claude.
Hmm.
And if you heard about the news in the past few months, I think 23andMe was acquired by private equity and shut down, or either acquired by private equity and turned into some menace, which people don't like anymore.
Hmm.
In that era of time, there was lots of publications about get your data out of 23andMe. I didn't really care too much, so I left my data in there. But I saw this post about using AI to talk about chat with your genes and see your
Hmm.
DNA. That's kind of cool. So I exported my data from 23andMe. Takes about 2 days to get a zip archive of all of your genetic markers that they measure. So not everything, but a decent chunk. And I chucked it into Claude, and we'll have to report back because I'll be quite honest. The original poster on Twitter was like, hey, upload into Claude Code. It'll do everything for you. When I had talked to Claude about it, it was like, do you want to focus on, heart health? Do you want to focus on diabetes? Like all these kind of key areas of risk that it would
Hmm.
go look at a subset of your DNA. So I need to finish the conversation. So a little bit of a tease there, but there's becoming these new use cases where we talked about Claude Code being the general agent. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of overhang, which is what the term people are using in AI now, saying that these models are so good, we just don't know how to use them yet to find these new breakthrough advances. And one of those seems to be analyzing your DNA from publicly or like private companies that collect your DNA. So maybe next pod, I'll give a breakdown of things that I found that I'm happy to share. But, taxes, it's becoming more
Hmm.
realistic, DNA more realistic, spending habits in general. I think there was a trending post from a user on Twitter saying, I dumped all my transactions in. I asked Claude to use my computer, which Claude has good computer use now to like use Chrome. And it
Hmm.
chatted, I think, AT&T or someone and like reduce the subscription amount. So there's
Hmm.
startups that do this like bill negotiation for you. But now they have Claude as a general agent that can look at your spending, look at, Chrome and see what's typed from an agent and just chat with itself, like, send chat messages. We get to a point where, we have powerful tools. It's just how do you use them and unlock new things? And so I'm getting the sense that, even a while ago, we heard about a few use cases, but there's been a big rise in Claude over the holiday break. because they had doubled everybody's limits. I think they gave a week free as well in December that anyone could try Opus. And my Twitter feed has been on fire talking about people who have either never picked it up or picked it up again, where they had tried a really old model, but now picked up the latest one and are loving it. So long story short is I think there's so much capabilities in these models. And I'm glad more people are picking it up because there's so much more to learn from them. Like if AI stopped right here, right now, January 7th, 2026, we'd still live a pretty good life, I think. I think there's a lot to eke out in Opus 4.5 and Codex 5.2. So yeah, a pretty exciting world we live in.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because the progress has moved so faster than people can really keep up with it. And so like, it still feels like we're like uncovering like, oh, this is really cool. I didn't know we could do this. And it's like Opus, I don't know exactly when Opus 4.5 came out, but like, people are still discovering new things that they can do with it, and people are still like coming up with original ideas of like what you can do. And so, yeah, it's pretty cool. I think, shoot, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. We can,
yeah, I was going to say like, my gut reaction to some of these things is one, I'm happy that I feel like I'm right, which is more of a self, like, oh, phew, like I loved Opus and other people do too. And then two is like, sometimes I'm like, oh, duh, it's really good. But then, like you mentioned, original ideas. Like, I don't have all the ideas in the world. One person can only have so many ideas. And when these people talk about these cool ways to use Claude, I'm like, wow, I've been using Claude since, May 2025. And I hadn't even thought of that. Like, I've been using it for months and months and months. And this person picked it up over the holidays, thought, oh, let me try that. And that ended up being a winning combo. So then in the back of my head, I'm like, we need way more people using this because people are creative. And when you have tools that allow you to be creative and build stuff, cool stuff comes out of that. And I think that part is the most important, is talking about how AI can be used by anybody. If you have the idea, you can build it with Opus now, quite literally. And so just come up with these cool ideas, try it out. You can get pretty damn far.
Yeah. The part where I lost my train of thought, got it back on the rails, is definitely, I think Claude and Opus and 5.2, like they'll be able to do the bulk of people's taxes, I think, at some point, or at least advise on it, and if you're a regular W-2 earner and, you have stock or you have retirement contributions, like if you're just, in that kind of 80% of the population, I'm sure it can probably do most of your taxes and at least advise you to most of your taxes. I think if you're in that, where you have multiple real estate partnerships and the operating agreements are different, like, yeah, you probably can still use AI, but I wouldn't trust it wholly, and I think it's interesting because a lot of the really high performing like CPAs and financial planners, like in my network, they get paid a lot by people that are doing really well. So like, there's certain financial planners out there and CPAs that work with, high net worth individuals and high earning individuals, and they pay them lots and lots of money for advice that they might be able to get out of Chat GPT. But it's really
don't say that too
more
loud.
than that. Well, no, I mean, but it's true because it's, I guess where I'm going with that though is that their clients, the high net worth individuals and the high earning individuals, they value, I think, one, feeling taken care of, that this person's got it. Like they don't have to be the ones to kind of suss out, is AI right or wrong? Like they can go, okay, Bennett, like you got this. I'm going to pay you. This is your problem to like deal with. Like just make sure I'm compliant, make sure I'm legal, and make sure my tax bill is really low. Like, so I still think there's a place for that. I guess where I'm going with this, even in the age of AI, it's just the same as like, there's still certain things that you could do personally that you just now pay someone to do. I still think there'll be that for a couple of years at least. And, beyond that, who knows? But maybe that's copium. But I think there's certain things where you're going to just want the human to do, like I'm going to a barbershop. I don't want a robot cutting my hair. Not yet. But like, I don't want them with all the blades, getting close to my neck. No thanks.
And even if you do pay someone to do your taxes in that high net worth scenario, I'm sure there's some expectation that you are using AI to fact check things or, look up new things in an effective way. So yeah, it's get the result that you need. However, do it intelligently and be up to date. How you do that might be not their concern, but yeah, I feel like AI being front and center, I don't think there's a big worry about using it now.
And a lot of times too, just to end on this note, on like the, tax thing, but like, CPAs and lawyers can represent you before the IRS. Like ChatGPT can't. So if you make a position and the IRS goes, no, you shouldn't have done that. We're not allowing that deduction or whatever it is that you tried to do. You have to go seek out a CPA or a lawyer anyway. So right now there's still like regulatory reasons too for CPA value. I don't think that's only the CPA values that they can represent you, but like that's part of, if you go to TurboTax or H&R Block, they're paid tax preparers. They can't really represent you in front of the IRS the same way that like a CPA or an attorney can. So yeah, just it's we're getting there, and I don't doubt in the future that maybe like there'll be some version of AI that can represent you, but like we're not there right now. So
that was my next startup idea: is those Boston Dynamic robots are dancing like crazy on stage for these insane videos that are really choreographed. Maybe the next startup is an AI CPA that will actually walk itself to court if things go wrong, and it'll come on the microphone and say, "Hey, I did everything right." So if you're in that space, and you're doing robotics and taxes, could be a nice hybrid. You never know.
Yeah, it's probably you don't have to be very like bulletproof. You can probably be pretty like you don't need to like invest a bunch. Like you're not going to hopefully get attacked in court. So yeah, it should be. Could be something that you could work on. Might be a market out there.
Interesting idea for the listeners out there. You're welcome. You heard it here first. We'll let you take it this time only. But one thing that I've been working on recently has been a lot more usage in Codex. So Peter Steinberger has been a very loud voice on Twitter. He's the man who has been tinkering with things 24/7, 365. And his recent blog post was about how he uses Codex now instead of Claude Code. So there was a meetup in San Francisco back in October where I attended, and he was there talking about kind of the era of Claude Code and how Claude Code is so good. A few months after that, kind of end of this year, Peter has officially switched to Codex, and his reasoning for that is basically Codex can one-shot things. So Claude Code, you do the same upfront planning. So for a coding change, you say, I want to change this, build this user feature. Here's my requirements. Claude will go look at some of your code, existing code, to see how to build it, present you a plan, and you say, go. I think the difference that Peter outlined, which I've come to agree with, is that Codex does a lot more upfront searching. So if I say, hey, go build a feature on Split My Expenses where I want to allow users to search expenses. This means on various screens where we show a list of expenses, there should be a search bar. If you tap into that search bar and you type, in and out, it should filter the expense list by what you typed in. And it needs to be private and safe and fast. I don't want other people searching in and out and, we get someone else's expenses in the list. Mm-hmm. So I have used Codex to build expense search as one of my, top requested features on my user feedback board for Split My Expenses. And it works so well. Like I was blown away by choosing Codex 5.2 as the model. There's also a thinking budget. So I think it's low, medium, high, or extra high. And from Peter's blog article, which I'll link in the show notes, he mentions using high as a default. Again, there's extra high, but that is almost too much, is how he puts it. And so high is a good in between of there's medium, which thinks a little bit and like gets most things done faster. But how he describes it is I'd rather spend more time up front and the task take longer and be done versus it being faster, and there might be room for error. And so this is my first trial run giving Codex, reins of my web app, which is splitmyexpenses.com, and the React Native app. So I was looking at both repositories, making code changes on the web app to power the mobile app, and did all that quite seamlessly. And so I would give a huge thumbs up to Codex and say, I think they've come a long way. Their interface has gotten better. The model harness has gotten a ton better. And using the right model in the right settings feels like it's a new unlock. Again, it could just be I didn't use Codex too much, I'll be quite honest, but using it today in January 2026 with extra high 5.2 model, just high 5.2 model, really, really feels good. Again, it takes longer to get things done. It's not significantly longer though. Opus still takes some time. So I think there used to be a divide where GPT-5 just took forever, like 25 minutes for something small. Codex gets a lot done, reads a lot more code. It's just a different wave. Like I feel like Claude Code is still there, and I still make probably 50% of my changes with Claude Code, but the harder ones, I feel like I'm naturally actually now going to Codex, which the harder coding problems feel like the meat of my work. Go fix the UI, go do that. Those are, easy things to fix, but the harder ones, to be the important model for the harder problems, a pretty good achievement. So, hats off to OpenAI. I think Peter put me on Codex, and there's so many tools that are out there that I have to try to believe it. Once I tried it and saw the power of it, I was like, I personally do not think Opus would have got me this far and like one-shotted it in the same vein that Codex did. So if you are looking to do a coding agent and you have picked up Claude Code recently and you love it, please try Codex and do GPT 5.2 High. Give it the same or similar task. I think you'll be very surprised and impressed at how well it looks at the code and formats code and produces solid results with no back and forth.
Yeah. And I think two things. I would second, I guess, the notion that like I'd rather spend time up front getting the plan right versus like not spending much time on the plan and then having to constantly like check in or course correct. Because I feel like the course correcting in my experience is where things kind of go off the rails. So it's like, no, don't go change that. Just change this. And then you start having to like basically undo. That's just like my perception of it, where it's like I remember being really impressed with the cursor plan mode because it's like it made the whole document and then it just went and it was like 90% of like what I wanted, which was great. I guess I was curious because you've been such a Claude Code proponent with Codex. Are you using the CLI or how are you using Codex? I'm just curious. In cursor?
Yeah, using the CLI. So it feels very similar. Claude still wins in terms of user experience. It feels better for whatever reason. Text input feels a little bit better. The diff view, when it adds and deletes code and it shows that visually, just feels better on Claude Code. Some of these things are hard to put your finger on, but that experience feels better. But the logic and the code quality I get feels higher, and significantly so from Codex. It's not miles ahead, but it's enough that again, if I do have a hard problem, I've been going to Codex now. And one last note about Codex that I think is actually an awesome addition is the $20 a month, which you get ChatGPT, I think Plus, and you get Codex. It gives you a ton of coding within the Codex CLI. So I pay for the $200 a month Opus one. I haven't hit my limits in a long time. Probably, I could probably go down to the $100 a month, but the $20 Codex, I feel like I get a ton of value out of building hard stuff with only $20. So it's almost inspired me to think, is Anthropic also shipping this many tokens for $20? Like I could save, $180 if I roll back my $200 to $20, because back in, May 2025, Opus consumed so many tokens and it was so good that you'd hit the limit. So I had to go to $200. Like I had taken a bite of the coding intelligence and I was like, I need more. At this point, the models have gotten so good that they use less tokens. So there's been conversations on Twitter of, should I be using, Haiku or Sonnet for a model? And the creator of Claude Code, Boris, has now joined Twitter, and he mentions, no, only use Opus 4.5 because it's so smart that it uses less tokens. A dumb model will use more tokens to kind of like think its way through things. But for someone who knows what they're doing, it uses less tokens. So it's this weird dynamic of it's smarter, so it's more efficient. And I think at the same vein, like Codex has done such a good job that I think for folks who haven't used it, definitely try it out. And that $20 package, although it seems like too cheap to be true, for me personally has worked out quite well. Again, I still pay $200 a month to Anthropic for Claude Code and I love it. But I don't know, maybe in a few months, like this will change. Oftentimes these models, go back and forth, and we'll have to see. I think the CLI wars are pretty, heated up right now, and I'm excited to see the competition. But yeah, for folks out there who haven't used Codex, definitely give it a try. Read Peter's article, which I'll link in the show notes. It helps you understand why Codex is useful and kind of gets you on his workflow. And he's spent millions and millions and millions of tokens every day. So pretty impressive.
Yeah. Whenever I look at his page, or maybe it's X profile, but there's like 7 or 8 websites. Like it's just got all kinds of stuff going on. I'm like, wow, that's impressive to be able to like even maintain. I know he's using AI a lot, which like that's not to take anything away from him. I'm like, damn, that's impressive. He's got that much going on, that many, what they say, like stakes in the fire or whatever. So yeah, pretty cool. Good for him.
Yeah, I think his latest title was I ship code I don't read. So it's kind of an excerpt from his blog article, Shipping at Inference Speed, published December 28th. But the headline is like, why I stopped reading code and started watching it stream by. So essentially, I think his theme is that model is so smart that I'm able to ask it to do something. I have high trust that it does it well, like architecturally in the code, and then I'll just test it and move on. Where I think is before, the models weren't as good, and so you felt like you need to be more hands-on with the code. I think he is now transitioning almost full force. So like, I look at some parts of the code, but not a lot of it. And due to that, I'm able to ship faster. And he already shipped fast before. So yeah, his developer pace is actually insane.
I feel like I never met Peter, and I hope this comes off as like a compliment and not like not a diss or whatever. But I had that movie, Deus Ex Machina, where it's, I don't know if you remember that movie. It's like the robot.
Yeah.
Is like there's like the guy like who has like the house and everything, who invites the main character over. I feel like he's like kind of trending towards like that. I'm trying to think of what the right way to phrase it. Like he's trending towards like the guy that has the house. Like he's just so advanced on like the uses of AI. Honestly, I imagine him in his house, like barely even touching his computer, but then just has all these websites. Like just Tony Stark. Maybe Tony Stark's a better example, not the Deus Ex Machina guy. But like Tony Stark, and just like he's in the lab with Jarvis, just like doing all this cool stuff. So yeah, it's cool. I'm sure, you know, he probably figured that out through lots and lots of like trial and error and just spending time with it and all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
I'll have to ask
follow.
him for a photo of his setup or something. That's a good question. I feel like all I see is his code output, but like, you know, what does it look like at home?
He's got to have a lab.
Does he live in 40 monitors?
Yeah, he's got to have a lab, you know, like just like a giant,
sure.
or like, you know, in Batman, The Dark Knight, he's got the, it's like, this is getting so nuanced or so specific, but like in The Dark Knight, Morgan Freeman's like looking at the wall and it's like 50 TVs. I'm like, is that like his setup, you know?
Those are all Claude Code, one per TV.
Yeah.
I guess Codex now.
Yeah. And anytime that people are complaining about Opus being bad, it's probably because he's like throttling it himself, you know?
Really nice guy. I'll probably get some time with him next week, but really nice. A leader in the AI space and publishes great content. So if you haven't read Peter's blog post, definitely start from the most recent one, but great insights and honestly fantastic software that he's been working on over the past 6 months.
Yeah. Cool. All right, what should we hit next, Brad?
Talk a little bit about agent skills. So I have seen an influx recently on my iOS Twitter crew where they are publishing more open source agent skills. So I think for iOS specifically, they become more important only because Apple hasn't done the best job at documentation. So oftentimes in the recent years, Apple has shipped new APIs. One key example is what they call concurrency. So Swift concurrency is a new language within the Swift programming language where there's a different mechanism to do multiple things at once on your computer. So you're coding this up using different APIs to have multiple things run. However, the evolution of concurrency has changed significantly over the past few years. Best practices have changed, APIs have changed. It just feels like a moving target for developers to hit. And now developers have to spend a lot of time to understand what is good and what is bad with these new APIs and how to, kind of migrate a project from pre-Swift concurrency to Swift concurrency. So long story short, Apple has a clear gap in best practices, and skills are the perfect way to summarize how to do this effectively given a real world code base. So I've seen so many interesting skills published. A main one that I'm seeing is Swift concurrency, and it makes it dead simple to kind of ideate knowledge, distill it into a markdown file, and share it with the world. And it's surprisingly effective. Like we talked about MCPs that are hard to set up, skills should be easier. Once you get it in, your agent should look at it, be able to pick it up dynamically. So that kind of context discovery works well. I haven't used the iOS ones yet, but I did clone the repo and take a look at it. So it's nice seeing skills pop up as a first-class citizen within both Claude and ChatGPT. And it's nice that people are actually contributing because one, kind of neat fact is it almost feels like you're distilling and outsourcing yourself because oftentimes as a developer, you have specific guidelines or taste and people are distilling that taste factor into a skill saying like, this is how I would do it. This is, how to make the code better. Some kind of undocumented strategies and guidelines, but they're publishing that for free. Just like, Adam Wathan published Tailwind. So much excellent open source software and information is out there these days that it almost becomes like you're outsourcing yourself. So a very interesting divide where you want to help others, but it's like almost secret or extremely useful knowledge, like what do you do with that? It's kind of like Peter Steinberger, where he creates these really fascinating software packages that he could probably sell, but he just puts them out there for free because he just loves doing it. So we're getting to this world where I think AI is enabling a lot more people. And to make AI effective, we take these really smart people and get knowledge from them. And it feels like skills is becoming that kind of repository of information where we ask smart people, how do you pull this off? Okay, write that down and share it with the rest of us. And that's where I see it headed. Maybe there'll be paid skills, but I'm happy that people are picking it up and starting to contribute to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, skills, I think, is something that when I first saw them, I was like, oh, those are just tool calls. And that's kind of how I viewed it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is still the right, like they kind of seek to accomplish the same thing, but I think from my understanding of them, I haven't really built out any Claude skills, but like, it's almost like there's like tool calls, but it's a bit more like AI where it's like text and because they're markdown files, right? At the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
they're typically like, so, but yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think it's cool to see. And again, it gives you, like you said, that kind of taste or like how you want to delegate things. It's not just like open-ended, so,
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be cool to see.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, we
Shall
wrapping up with
we?
that, Brad? Yeah, do
Yeah,
our
let's do it.
bookmarks.
We talked about
All
it
right.
so much. So I'll kick it off with bookmarks. So I've already talked about it a little bit, but the creator of Claude Code, Boris Cherny, I think that's how you say it, is on Twitter now. I think he joined in December. And Andrei Karpov tweeted December 26th, the day after Christmas, saying, I've never felt this much behind as a programmer. This profession is being dramatically refactored as the bits contributed by the programmer are increasingly sparse in between. Really long Twitter post after that, but the TLDR is things are shifting and it's clear. And what do you do about it? Boris, the creator of Claude Code, then responds to that Karpov tweet and says, I feel this way most weeks, to be honest. Sometimes I start approaching a problem manually and have to remind myself, in quotes, Claude can probably do this, which is, a kind of nice revelation. And at the end, Boris closes with, the last month was my first month as an engineer that I didn't open an IDE at all. Opus 4.5 wrote around 200 GitHub pull requests, every single line within each of those pull requests. Software engineers radically changing, and the hardest part, even for our early adopters and practitioners like us, is to continue to readjust our expectations. And this is still just the beginning. So, fantastic quote from Boris. I think I truly have felt this, and I've been singing Claude Code's praises, although, I do love Codex now too, ever since May 2025. But yeah, it's becoming weird. I think I have gotten over this thought of software engineering is different. Like, to me, I don't feel as impacted as Karpathy, but I don't know. I'm not sure why I feel that way. I just feel like I go with the times and I'm like, hey, this is how things are now. I'm happy about it. I can still build stuff. I don't sit and dwell and like, damn, I used to, write code by hand anymore. But when people bring this up, it does bring up that feeling in me where like, oh, I did used to do that. So it is a little weird, but here we are. I'm happy about it. We have great tools. So if you aren't following Boris or Karpathy, definitely follow them on Twitter. I'll link the Boris response, but very interesting. A very principled engineer not opening their IDE for the first time in their career. I don't know about you, but it seems like a seismic shift in software engineering.
Yeah, I mean, I think even the Stack Overflow thing to me was big too, because it's like that's when I was learning Python and all this stuff, like in 2016, 2017, I was there every day. I was coding. I didn't code every day, but every day I was coding, I was on there. So yeah, it's stunning. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how you couldn't read those tweets and not get excited too, because it's like we are here. Like this is a moment in time. Like let's get after it. So yeah, that's pretty cool. My bookmark is from Levels, who, if you don't know who Levels is, that's your fault, because he's one of the better follows on X. I won't go into his background, but you just follow him. But basically, like the most famous indie hacker, and I'll leave it at that. But my bookmark from him is he basically, and I'm sure he wasn't, and I'm sure he doesn't claim to be the person that like found out how to do this, but he's making it popular, and it came into my feed because of him. Where you can basically Claude Code on mobile through like a VPS. And so I don't know the exact, it's a bookmark because I want to look and see exactly how he does it. But I think he has a VPS and he's writing requests into Claude Code. And I think even at one point he was using like Whisper Flow or something like that to like just dictate into his phone, which was talking to Claude Code, which was doing like, writing code for him and doing pull requests or whatever, push requests, whatever the right phrase is. So, then that, of course, people were like replying and be like, oh, I'm doing this too, blah, blah, blah. So I want to check it out. It seems pretty cool. Because at that point, if you're on your computer and you got Claude Code and you're doing stuff and like, oh, I got to go to Chipotle, I'll be right back. And you start doing it on your phone, you're just talking to it like, oh, hey, actually tweak this. Like you could just be cracked, as the kids say, right? Just constantly clodding out. I think I made a joke to you in text, like, St. Claude, right? It's just like, that's where it's at right now in terms of just like productivity and people doing stuff. Maybe that'll change in 3 to 6 months, but like, yeah. So anyway, so people just can't get enough of it. Even setting up like VPS to like remote in and to be able to do it on mobile, it's crazy.
Yeah, crazy times we're in, but we love it. We're learning every day. Not every day can you say that.
For sure. And if you're not learning, then that's boring, right? Even just look, I might be weird, but like I like learning, like even like tax stuff. So like if you're not learning, it's boring, right? Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
So,
and if you do love learning, AI is the perfect spot to be in because man, there's a new thing every 5 minutes. So definitely something to get used to.
And also too, and we'll wrap up with this because I know we're going long on time. Learning will be so interesting because I was talking about this with my wife and then my buddy. Like, what will college look like when my kids are of college age? And if you end up having kids, like what will college look like? Will it look like it does today, or will it be like you got an AI professor? I couldn't stomach paying $80,000. You know what I mean? Like it sounds, I don't know, but maybe it's not that. Maybe it's like where you meet friends and meet your partners or something. Like I don't know. Yeah, but like it becomes like a really expensive dating service. Who knows? But
wow,
yeah.
you can't ending on that. That's a thought provoker. Wow.
Yeah. Like just what would college look like? And my kids, my oldest is like 8. So like in 10 years, like what would that look like? I don't know.
Yeah, I can't even imagine 5 years. 10 years feels like oof.
Yeah.
I have at-home robots like feed me, all meals
And
every
there's
day. So that'd be cool.
there's no way it can be as expensive as it is right now. There's no way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I digress.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, if you're listening,
Awesome.
maybe that's the comment we'd love to hear from you. What will college be like in 10 years? Let's hear some theories. I, for one, am hard to put my finger on anything specific, but it'll be different. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right, Brad. Good stuff. We'll wrap it up there.
Cool. Sounds good. See you next time.
Yep. See you, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Breaking Brothers podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you may be listening from. Also, be sure to subscribe to our show and YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Thanks and take care. All views and opinions by Bradley and Bennett are solely their own and unaffiliated with any external parties.